Good morning. Today I want to talk about India's 1998 nuclear test done by the Bajpayee government, which in my assessment were unnecessary, mindless, ideologically driven, did not help India's national security, actually went and helped the Pakistani case. And the reason I'm talking about the test today is because of the Ladakh crisis. As we are aware, in the last 1 year, as reported, the PLA is an occupation of a large chunk of Indian territory. And there is something like 200,000 troops of both sides. They are facing one another. It is in this condition, this situation, that the government of India and all the military analysts, they believe that nuclear powers don't go to war. That means when you have so many conventional forces facing one another, then nuclear powers will not go to war. This is a hypothesis. Now, the problem with this is it has been taken out of context. This hypothesis was enunciated or created during the Cold War between two major powers, America and the Soviets. So it was in the 50s, early 50s, when the Americans realized that the Soviets were very good at churning out more and more conventional weaponry, more tanks, more guns, because in their thinking, the quantity had a quality of its own. Now, the American dilemma was how to take this on this quantity, which actually didn't have much quality, but the quantity was there. So, this assignment, what to do, was given to DARPA. DARPA, as we know, the US Department of Defense, which is also called the Pentagon because of the shape of the building, Pentagon. It is a specialized wing of the Pentagon. It's Defense Advanced Research Project Agency, and this is responsible for looking at emerging technologies. So they were given the task that how do we take on this Soviet threat? So they proposed, and President Eisenhower accepted the use of battlefield nuclear weapons, which is what we also call the tactical nuclear weapons. The whole idea was that with battlefield nuclear weapons, the overwhelming assault of the Soviets can be stopped. And this worked. And this came to be known as the US's first offset strategy. Offset basically means how do you offset the advantage of the enemy. So it was decided that, okay, this is the way we'll do it, and it worked. The battlefield nuclear weapons. Then by early 70s, the Americans realized that two things that happened in the theater, in the European theater between American and the Soviet Union forces. And the two things was, number one, the Soviets built up a nuclear arsenal which was as big as that of the United States. So an early use of tactical nuclear weapons was no longer a credible threat because the danger of escalation was simply too great. And the second thing that happened was that the Soviets actually not only built up the quantity, they built up a certain quality also. And they came to match to some extent in certain areas, the quality of the American equipment. So here was now again a problem, because suddenly the use of nuclear weapons suddenly became unnecessary. It could not be put into the theater. So again the problem was presented to DARPA. Now DARPA came up with the solution that yes, when there are two major powers which have very big arsenals, nuclear arsenals, then this tactical nuclear weapons, this will not work, this is not credible. We have to go back to conventional warfare. And because in conventional warfare, both sides were nearly matched, so they came up with this thinking that we need to create conventional weaponry which can look deep and shoot deep. In other words, it should be precision munition, guided munition, which can have a similar battlefield effect at long ranges comparable to a tactical nuclear weapon. So this was done. and this came to be known as the second offset strategy. Of course, this was never tested against the Soviets, but yes, it was tested by the Americans in the 1991 Gulf War against Iraq, and it was a resounding success. So, this theory that nuclear powers don't go to war, this basically did not work because of two reasons. As we see in the second offset strategy, the first reason was that the risk of nuclear escalation was simply too great. And number two was because the conventional capabilities were nearly matched of the two sides, the military objectives, sizable or good military objectives, were very difficult to achieve in a conventional war. But this is not the case between China and India today. You see, because China has an overwhelming superiority in nuclear arsenal and an overwhelming superiority in the conventional arsenal. People don't seem to realize that these 1 lakh troops that we keep talking about, they are basically, the technology is no match to the PLA technology, and more than that, they are working on a 30 years old war concept. The PLA will be working on, or will actually fight, what is known as the informatized and the intelligence-sized war, which the Indian military is not taking any cognizance of. In other words, here the situation is fundamentally different. This thinking does not apply here at all. In fact, the PLA will be in a position, should they decide, to do an occupational war. It is within their realm of possibility. And insofar as our nuclear weapons are concerned, you see our SSBNs, INS Arihant, our Agni 5s, they actually will have no role. Why I say this is because, as we have seen, when the PLA came here, we said that our nuclear weapons are not for war fighting, they are for deterrence. They were not deterred. They came and occupied our territory. So that has failed completely. But we have not planned it for war fighting. We never said that this is for war fighting. So you see, today they have the capability, overwhelming capability in the nuclear realm. They can use tactical nuclear weapons. They can do launch on warning. And more than anything else, they can destroy our kill chain by their cyber capabilities. Now, if this is where we are, why did we do the nuclear test? The 1998 nuclear test. And what is amazing about the test is that within hours of doing the test, Prime Minister Bajpayee, he actually wrote a letter to the President of US, Clinton, which they made public. They gave it to the New York Times, where he blamed China for India's test, China and the nexus between Pakistan and China. Now, this is what has helped Pakistan. I will explain. Pakistan, the moment India did the test, they were very clear about their roadmap that they need a credible weaponization, which they achieved in 6 steps. I will relate those 6 steps. First of all, as a background, US Deputy Secretary of State Stroop Talbot, he visited Pakistan immediately after the Indian test, trying to dissuade them from doing the test of their own. The Pakistan Army Chief, General Karamat, heard him and then requested him that A, please don't interfere with our national security, we'll do exactly what we have to do. And number 2, please stop the arm twisting. We know all this because Stroop Talbot has written that in his book, all this in his book called Engaging India. Now, what are these 6 steps the Pakistan Army did for a credible weaponization? Number 1, 3 things were done by General Karamat when he was still the chief immediately after the test. He ordered 3 studies. One study was on nuclear command and control. Second was on nuclear doctrine. What should be the nuclear doctrine? The third was on nuclear diplomacy. Now, nuclear diplomacy suddenly became very important because of the tests, which means that Pakistan foreign policy the Pakistan army would have a big say in that from there on, because of the nuclear factor. In other words, because of us, because of Indians, the Pakistan army, which was responsible for the security of their nation, also became the big force behind their foreign policy. If we all recall, General Karamat then approached his Prime Minister and said that, look, the Pakistan army should have a formal role in governance. We know that he resigned after that. We know Musharraf came in. But what he said in 1998, 20 years later, in 2018, it became a reality with the first combined government of Imran Khan and the army chief. How did this help? This removed any reasons for the coup. You see, Pakistan always went back because of the coups that the army did. Now there was no need to do it because they were part of the government. I'm just digressing to explain that how things mindlessly, when you do things, they shape up and what comes out of it. Now coming back to the steps that I spoke about. So three things were to have a credible weaponization, as I mentioned. They were nuclear command and control, nuclear diplomacy, nuclear doctrine. Musharraf came to power and then he did another three. And what he did was, he created the Strategic Plans Division. Now, Pakistan's nuclear arsenal, Pakistan's anything to do with the nuclear is actually under the Strategic Plans Division, which is under the Pakistan Army Chief. This is the reality. He created three verticals so that all three can do their specialized independent job, and yet he remains in control of all that. Why in control? What are these three verticals? The verticals are Strategic Plans Division for the nuclear weapons, then ISI, which is responsible for their irregular war, and the Director General Military Operation, which is responsible for the conventional war. In other words, under the army chief, a very important step, which is a seamless, credible transition from a conventional war to a nuclear war, was created, and everybody could see that. It was a very important step. Now, what did he do next? He opened the twin route, the second route of the plutonium route. How to, you see, they use uranium. Now he opened the second route, plutonium processing also, reprocessing also. That was opened. Why it was opened? Now they have a double route, because the ballistic missile need compact nuclear cores. So it was done for that. Because at the end of the day, everybody knows that their vector or their delivery system for the nuclear weapons will be their ballistic missiles, which are again under the Pakistan army. So this is the next step he did. What did they, after that, again mindlessly, our army chief, General Nirmal Vij, on the one hand in 2003, this general is talking of creating a fence on the line of control. And in 2004, he is talking of a cold start doctrine. I mean, what is going on? You talk of a defensive mindset and then you say, I will have a cold start. That means you just take off and you go in the enemy territory. But it was an opportunity for the Pakistan army. So, within years they declared that they had, the analysts started talking of that they had the capability for the tactical nuclear weapons, and they started talking of a full spectrum capability, and the vector they said was the Nasr ballistic missile. Now see these simple 6 steps. This is what is called a credible weaponization, which they have accomplished. Now, it didn't stop at this. Musharraf was clever, smart man. In 2000, because Vajpayee created the nexus, gave the reasons to the American that there was a nexus between the two, in 2000, he approached the Chinese and he offered the Gwadar deep sea port to them. And they took it. Today, this will be the CPEC, the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, which is the flagship of the BRI, owes its genesis, its root to that offer that Musharraf had made to the Chinese of Gwadar port in 2000, and this is a reality. Not only that, because of that, their interoperability increased. Now, interoperability, when I say, this needs a little dwelling. First of all, another myth created by the Indians and our analysts is that, look, we are conventionally superior to the Pakistan military. Wrong. India is not conventionally, in conventional weapons, superior to the Pakistan military and the Pakistan army. If it was, then there would be no military line. There would be a decisive war. In 1947-48, the ceasefire line got created. In 65, India could not obliterate that. In 71, all we could do was mutually agree and give it another name, line of control. And in 1999, which was actually an aberration, our chief at that time, he spoke of a limited war, that he coined the phrase limited war. You see, there's nothing called limited war. Between two sides fighting, the one which is more capable in conventional war fighting and the nuclear capability will decide whether it will be a limited or it will be a full-fledged war. But that now led to this thinking limited war, that, oh, if we can do the limited war, why can't we do a two-front war? See, I'm digressing here, but just to say that in what is the way that we are thinking and how clever, in a clever way, our adversaries are thinking. So, you see, this is what we, so in other words, in any case at the operational level or the war fighting level, India and Pakistan armies and militaries, they were nearly matched. Why they were matched is because at that campaign level, if India was superior, the line of control would not be there any longer. Now what has happened is, because of this intraoperability and plenty of things, of course, which have happened not only because of this test, but because of the other thing that we did in Jammu and Kashmir, removal of 370. You see, today I say with a certain assertion, with a certain, understanding that they perhaps in the next war, the Pakistan military, we will see that they have overmatched us at the conventional level of war. This is what we have to be prepared for operational surprises. So this is what the nuclear test did. Now let's see what they did for us, the nuclear test, because we did them. So what they did for us is, this is very interesting, and this is all from Stroop Talbot's book. Even before the tests were done, you see, the Bajpayee government for the second time, because the first time they were there only for 13 days, when they came to power at the center, the Americans were a bit uneasy, because in the election manifesto, they have spoken of doing nuclear tests. So, the energy secretary at that time, Bill Richardson, who was close to Clinton, the president, he came here to meet up with the leaders here just to check with them that whether you will follow your election manifesto or not. One of the surprise visitors at night at the American embassy where he was staying was who? Guess who? It was Jaswant Singh. Jaswant Singh did not have any official status, but he was close to the Prime Minister Bajpayee. Stroop Talbot writes in his book, Jaswant Singh met Bill Richardson at night and told him, conveyed a message of the Prime Minister that if the US President wants to talk anything special, he can talk through me instead of going through that lumbering and the lazy bureaucracy. So, and Americans were wondering, what are they talking about? I mean, what message do we need to convey? Till in about a week's time, India did the nuclear test and everything came out in the open. Now, any government which does nuclear test, any nation, your big concern or big thing should be how do I weaponize it fast, which is what the Pakis did. Here it was that how do I get close to the Americans? This was the thing. This was the priority. Why I say this is, as we know, there were 13 rounds of talk between Jaswant Singh and Stroop Talbot about on non-proliferation, and more than that, the National Security Advisor Brijesh Mishra, he came out with a draft nuclear policy in August 1999, and this worried the Americans. Stroop Talbot spoke about this to Jaswant Singh, and Jaswant Singh said not to bother about it, it's not real. Then, as we know, India nearly signed the Comprehensive Test Ban Treaty also. It is not that we didn't want to sign it, it's because the US Senate didn't sign it and we got saved. Otherwise, we were happy to sign that also. And as we know, when these tests happened, our own scientists, our nuclear scientists, they said that we are not sure. They put question mark over our thermonuclear tests. And they said that for a submarine-based deterrence, you need scientifically you need more tests so that you get that right balance between the weight and the yield ratio. I don't think India can ever do it any more tests. And now we are talking of this MIRVs, multiple targetable re-entry vehicles for the Agni 5. So you see, where will you use your Agni 5? That is a big question. So these are the things that we have to think, and this all can be traced back to our 1998 nuclear test. Look, our two adversaries mean business. They mean so much of business that we should stop seeing two fronts. We should start seeing one reinforced front, and this is the reality. And the reality is that starting from Bajpayee government's test, it has strengthened this nexus. Thank you very much.